It's exciting to be here. I was told that I would have a group of around 50 people, so I printed 100 copies, and there's obviously more than 100 of you here. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate having you all here so that we can talk about this important part of writing. Just real quick, my background, I work in human resources, like Rachel told you. I went to Grand Valley for my bachelor's degree in management, and then Central for my master's degree in human resources administration. So I have a little bit of a background in employment and writing cover letters, resumes, reading a lot of them, hundreds a week. So hopefully I'll have some time at the end if you have any questions that you would like to ask me about cover letters, resumes, references, and thank you notes. So on that note, I was just going to go over the 4 types of documents that are the most common in applying for jobs. So how many people have had to put together a resume and cover letter to submit for a job application? Lots of you. And how many people have just had to fill out just that application, that's that legal document when you walk into an employer and they just hand you a paper? So there's been both ways. So more often than not, as you finish your degree, you're going to have to fill out the actual, or you're going to have to create a cover letter and resume in order to get a position or apply for a position that you're interested in. So it's really important that you learn how to sell your skills, per se, in a cover letter and resume so that the employer can see why they want to bring you in for an interview. So the first document is the cover letter, and I'm first just going to talk about the purpose of a cover letter. The cover letter introduces you and your resume to the employer. So it's the very first thing that an employer is going to see when they start looking over your documents. So it's your first impression. I think it's a really good thing to think about that as your first impression. It explains why you're applying for the job. So why are you interested? What makes you interested in the position? What makes you interested in the company? Those are all things to put in the cover letter. It details why you're a good match for the organization and the position. So maybe your experience makes you a good fit, maybe your interest in the organization makes you a good fit. Say it's a nonprofit and you want to work for a nonprofit, that would be a good place to put why you want to work for a nonprofit. Say it's the Humane Society. You love working with animals, so something like that. Let's see. I get easily winded.
You want to sit down?
No, I just have.
Seat right here.
It's all right. I've got a couple kids squishing my lungs. So, all right. It demonstrates your abilities and helps you establish your credibility. So your writing is the first sample that they're going to see of you as a professional. So if you have a lot of errors in your cover letter, a lot of grammatical issues, if it's not well formatted, if it's hard to read, that's their first impression of you, and that demonstrates your abilities right away. So it's really important that your writing is demonstrating like your best abilities with writing. All right, and then lastly, it draws your reader's attention to specific qualifications and provides a sample of your written communication skills, which I kind of already said in the other points, but it is a sample of how you're going to write to external people. So say you're applying for a position that you're going to be talking to a lot of people externally, in email, in written communication, say you're going into marketing. This is the first sample that they're going to get of how you're going to communicate with people externally. So it's really important that this is the best first impression you have. Are there any questions before I keep going? No? All right. You should tailor your cover letter to do the following things. First is show specific needs of the employer and how you meet those needs. How do you know the needs of the employer? Can I get volunteers to participate? How do you know what the employer is looking for? Yeah.
You need the job description?
Absolutely. It's on the job description. So read that job description. I always encourage people to print a copy of the job description off if they're applying for a job, because then they have a copy of what they are writing to, and they can keep that, because sometimes it does take an employer a couple weeks to get back to you, and you want to be able to refer back to that when they do call you in for an interview. Good. The next reason is you want to persuade that your goals align with the organization's goals and that your skills will align with the requirements of the position. So a lot of times I have seen people will take and they'll put a grid on their cover letter, and I really do like this as an HR professional, and they'll say, you're looking for somebody with a bachelor's degree and 2 years experience and good experience with Microsoft Office. And then you can say, I have a bachelor's degree in English from Ferris State University, and I have 5 years experience working in this industry as this title of the position, and I have so many years experience working with Microsoft products. So they put on one side what's being asked for, and the other side what they have to offer. So then there's no question. You're meeting those needs of the employer right away. So that's a strategy that people have used. You can also put that in paragraph form. So, and then let's see. Make sure that you're highlighting your qualifications related to the position again, and that you're aligning with the organization and you're meeting the job requirements. So if they use certain language in that job description that you printed out, make sure to use that same language. I'm failing to come up with a good example of a different type of language, but GRCC has our own footprint, and we have our own language that we use. So make sure you're using something similar that they're using on the job description. Use the same words that they're using, okay? So that's a cover letter. The next bit is a resume. And I imagine a lot of people have put together resumes. Has anybody had to put together a resume for an English class? Yeah? Good. Okay. A resume is a document that summarizes your education, employment history, and experiences that are relevant to your qualifications for a particular job. I mean, that's pretty basic, right? So what should it include? First, since you're all here, and a lot of people want to highlight what you're doing here at GRCC, you want to highlight your education. So make sure that your education is on there. You want to put the institution where the degree was granted. So when you complete, make sure that you put Grand Rapids Community College. You put the location, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then also the date of graduation. So if you graduated in 2015, you want to put not just 2015, but either degree conferred in 2015, degree granted in 2015, so that we know it's completed. A lot of people will put that they were there for 2 or 4 years or however long that they attended school, but we don't know if you actually finished unless you put something that your degree was awarded, granted, conferred, any of those words. So make sure to put that in there so that we're not guessing as to whether or not you do or do not have that degree. Okay. The next is GPA. People always ask about GPA on a resume, and I don't personally find it super important. If you have a GPA that's worth putting on a resume, I absolutely think you should do that. You have a 3.5 and you're doing great, that's something to share. But if you don't have a super high GPA and you don't want to put it on there, it's not necessary. So people always ask that question. The next is your work experience. So work experience always goes on a resume from your most recent experience backwards. So typically I'll say use the last 3 employers, depending on how long you've been there. So 3 employers, 10 to 15 years is probably all you really need to put on your resume. Okay? You don't want a 6-page resume with every job you've ever had. So even if they were only there for 2 months. So the most applicable. And a lot of people will break up their work experience, especially if they're new in a career, to professional work experience. So in the actual discipline that you want to work in, and then just some of those other maybe jobs you had while you were in college. So they'll do professional work experience and then just work experience. So if I were to do that, I would have put on my resume, my professional work experience was maybe my HR internship when I first started, and I'd put all of the stuff that I did with that. And then I'd have a separate section when I said that I worked at Boyne up in Petoskey as a server for how many years, and just some of the basic things that I did there. But just so I'm separating out my career goals and my just jobs that I had. Okay? Let's see. With work experience, make sure to have the name of the employer, the dates of employment, and the title that you have, and at least 3 bullet points of responsibilities. I can tell you as a personal pet peeve, and I don't know if other people will agree with me or not, but I don't like it when I have a whole paragraph of work responsibilities and I have to try to decipher what you did. Bullet points work a lot better because sometimes the employers are reading up to 200 to 500 resumes a week, And if they can find those bullet points really quickly, it makes their job that much easier. So try to think of the person on the other end. The last bit, or the other sections that you could include, first is the header and the contact information, and then after I explain these, we're gonna look at the resumes I handed out. The contact information should all have accurate contact information where somebody can reach you. So the phone number should be in service, the email address should be one that you're actually checking, and your address should be the one that you should receive mail at in case they need to get a hold of you. If any of that information updates in like 2 weeks after you've applied to a job, like say you lost your cell phone and you got a new one, make sure to call them and let them know that you have a new cell phone number and you have a different place to be reached. Because they could be trying to reach you and then they just think that you don't care and you don't want that interview. So make sure that you keep the employers updated as you're doing that. And then there are other optional sections that you can put on your resume. Computer skills, honors and awards, languages, certifications, volunteer experience, professional memberships, and community service. So all of these things are really important to an employer, but you only have to add them if you have them. So if you have language skills and you're fluent in another language, that's absolutely something to put on your resume. That's very valuable to a lot of employers. If you are a member of a professional membership, so for example with Human Resources, I am a member of SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resources Management. I always put that on my resume just so that they know that I keep up to date in the field. So if you have something similar in the field that you're going into, that's something to put on there as well. It shows that you're keeping up to date. All right, so now we're gonna try to get interactive even though there's over 100 of you. So I passed out 2 resumes, and those resumes are being submitted to a job at the City of Grand Rapids for an accountant position. It's an entry-level accountant position. These are the 2 applications that this position received. We're just gonna pretend they got 2. And we have to decide which one that we're gonna choose to bring in for an interview. So if you could read them over, the cover letter and resume, I'll give you a couple minutes and then we will go ahead and talk about that. Yeah. No, I'm okay. I just get winded when I talk. I know. It's so funny. I do it in my class too. They're like sitting on my lungs. I feel funny standing at the front too. Like I usually walk around.
Yeah, no, the last speaker did walk up and down.
Did they?
You can message It's very professional.
I had to throw something like that in there.
I would just put save.
Did everybody back here get?
Nobody back here.
Nobody got any of them? Does anybody have a couple extra copies, or are you done so I can pass them back here so they can also participate? Oh. Thank you. Oh. You got it?
Great.
The back 2 rows, I think, didn't get them.
I'm still thinking.
All right, just a couple more minutes so that the people in the back can have a chance to read it, and then we'll get started. I think there's
Over here, anyone?
There's a gentleman back there that needs one.
I'm not sure.
I think the gray and the maroon shirt wanted one.
Did you get one? Okay. Well, there's some more.
Okay. All right, one more minute, and then we're going to talk about both applicants.
Are you gonna have twins?
I am. Yeah, until I have to stand up and talk.
How far along are you?
6.5 months. Yep.
Do you know the sex yet?
No, not yet.
No.
Are you waiting for the
Yeah. My husband wants to, so.
Are you gonna be your first child?
Yep. They will be. Good. All right, I hope everybody had a chance to look them over. So who would bring John in for an interview? A lot of people liked John's. Okay, what about Melissa? Would anybody choose Melissa?
If she was decent, it depends versus what other candidates. If it's just versus the John Doe, then no. But
Yeah, so just comparing the two.
yeah.
Party girl.
You got it, yeah. She had an inappropriate email address that I was trying to make a point with that. Make sure to use the email address that you would want an employer to see. So what was it about Melissa's application or cover letter and resume that you were less interested in when you're comparing it to John?
John Doe's had more experience.
And
John has more experience, okay.
It's more elaborate, it described in detail what
Yeah.
how he fitted for the position.
Yeah, he better described how he fit into the position. Good job. Anything else?
John had more qualifications because he put the computer proficiencies and the leadership and achievements.
Yep, he added additional qualifications on there. Yeah,
He had more professional language as well.
more professional language. Good.
More organized.
More organized. Good. Anything else? So I agree with all of those things, but what if I told you that this is the exact same resume that I just pared down? So it's the exact same experience. The person, I took one resume and I made 2 out of them, and so this person has the exact same experience and has the exact same qualifications as the other person. So it just really shows how much good writing in a resume and cover letter is going to either count you in or out for an application process. So if you look at both of them, they both have the same degree. They both got the same degree, but you can see that John put on his application that his degree was awarded in June of 2006, where Melissa just put 2006. So it leaves you guessing, right? Did she finish the degree? Did she not finish the degree? Professional experience, they were both staff accountants from 2006 until now. They did the same exact things, except John did elaborate on his experience and exactly what he did with all of those particular job responsibilities that he listed on his application. In addition, they had the same exact internship, so you'll see, but you don't know how long Melissa was an intern because she just put the year of her internship. She didn't put the months of her internship. So that leaves you guessing as to how long was she there? Was she there for 2 months? Was she there for 4 months? Was she there for the whole year? So make sure to elaborate on those details when you're putting your resume together too. And then lastly, she put her employment. So like I was explaining, you can separate your professional experience from your employment. And they both had the same employment background. Again, one has dates that are a little bit more specific than the other, so you're not left guessing as to how long that person was working there. In addition, those optional sections were added by John as far as computer proficiencies and then leadership achievements. So under the leadership and achievements, John put that he had completed 2 pieces of the CPA exam, which is very valuable. Melissa could have done the same thing because she completed those as well, because again, it's the same exact person. And there's a professional membership as well, Holland Youth Professionals, and that just shows that that John is active outside of just his job within his professional groups that are apply to his job. So does this make a big difference in your mind as to how you want to put your resume together? I think it's a good example, personally. If you look at the cover letter, I just removed essentially the middle 2 paragraphs from John's and made Melissa's. So if I just removed all of those details that are really important to explaining why John was good for the job, and then it showed that Melissa wasn't as good for the job because you just didn't know. You were left guessing. Good? Any questions on this? Yeah?
I have a question. For me, like, I've been to school and I had a professional career before, but I decided to go back to school. So how would I separate the professional and just the regular employment? Because, you know, I'm not obviously doing what my profession is right now.
Right.
So
the question was, she had a professional career and now she's decided to come back to school to go into a different profession. So she has some professional experience that she would want there. It's not necessarily just a job where you would list just that you were, you know, on the grounds crew, for example, like this resume says. So what I would do is I would just list them all together, and then I would add more bullet points for the professional job that you had and fewer bullet points for the more just jobs that you had had. So if you look at John's resume, what I would do is just eliminate this employment line here and put them in order by year, but keep them all there. So one of them might be really short, and then the next one will be longer with more descriptions. Yeah?
So I've attended, I think, about 3 colleges. This is my 3rd college. Would I include all of them?
Did you complete degrees at all of them?
No, I haven't completed my degrees.
I would put your current college that you're seeking your degree from, and then put your estimated graduation date or your anticipated graduation date. So you don't have to put all of them if you were transferring from one school to the next. So that's not necessary. Yeah, all the way in the back. Megan? Oh, it's Megan.
I noticed there's the 2 different typefaces. Does that make a difference? Like, you get that visual of one
Yeah.
is the more common Times New Roman and the other one is the Calibri.
Is something a little bit fancier? I don't know, do you guys think that that makes a difference? The different fonts? Yeah? I honestly don't think it makes a difference myself, as long as they're easy to read. I almost went and put like a cursive, because those are really hard to read, and I would say to stay away from any sort of like cursive fonts or that scripty looking font. That's too hard for people to read. So I think either font is fine. I tried to fill up the page, which is why I used that font, because there was lesser information, which a lot of people will do when they're trying to fill a resume page. They use a larger font or something that takes a little bit more space. So I think as long as it still looks professional, that's okay. You can use the font to kind of put your personality in your resume, but make sure that you're not putting too much personality in there where they can't read it or it's hard to decipher what you've done. Good question. Any other questions? I shouldn't have walked all the way up here. No? Okay. So now that you chose John for the interview, say he went through the interview, and on his resume, you notice that he's missing one thing that typically people will add to a resume. Can anybody tell me what that is? Yeah?
Professional references?
Professional references, great. That's exactly what I was referring to. So a lot of times on the bottom, people will put references available upon request. They'll maybe list 3 professional references. Either way is fine, as long as you let those references know that you're gonna put them on your resume, because you don't want somebody to call your references and they have no idea that you've applied for a job and that you've listed their name. So it's really good to give them a heads up. Hey, I'm using you as a reference, I hope that's okay. Get their permission, and then let them know what job you applied to, so that when somebody calls, then they'll be able to speak to that position itself. Maybe give them a copy of that job description that you printed out so that they can talk to the job itself. References are going to be important, and most employers will call references, especially for professional jobs that you're going to get later. You can use past employers, professors, advisors as professional references. I would stay away from friends, family. Those just aren't very credible references, or we don't take them as credible references because obviously they're going to say something nice about you, right? Or we hope they will. But a lot of people will use maybe pastors, anybody that has worked with you in a setting that's not a family or just a friend. So those are the types of people that you want to find.
What about professors?
Yes, yep, absolutely. Professors are great references. My husband is actually a good example, and I use this example pretty frequently. We went to Grand Valley State University, and he was a part of a professional organization. And the advisor for that professional organization ended up being one of his references because at his last employer, they looked down upon looking for other jobs. So he didn't want to use anybody at his employer. So then his professional reference that he used actually ended up being a contact of a community accounting firm, and he ended up getting the job because of they knew each other, and he was able to provide a reference for Ryan with his work on the professional activity. Sorry, I'm like, I'm not this out of shape. Okay, so that's a good question though. You can definitely use people in college, and that's why it's a really good idea to make good relationships with your professors and make sure that you're, having good attendance, communicating with them well, because you can use these people that you go to class every week as references, and they can speak to you, to your skills and your attendance level, how early you are, how good you are at turning in assignments on time, how good you work with team members. I mean, think of all the things the professors know about you just from taking one class. So that's a great reference. Any other questions about references? A lot of people put references available upon request at the bottom of the resume. It is important to know that you have to have a reference page available if they do request it. So if you go to an interview and you have that on the bottom of your resume, make sure that you have a reference page with you to give to them should they ask for it, because you don't want to make them wait. So if they're going to want to call your references, that's a really good sign. You're moving through the process, so you want to get that to them right away. So make sure you have that prepared and it's with you when you're there for the interview. All right, so then the interview's done. Now what do you do? Ask how much they're gonna pay you. No, not quite yet. You gotta get the job offer first, right? A thank you card, absolutely, or a thank you email. I think that both are sufficient, and some employers like one better than the other. Again, that's just a personal preference thing. I love handwritten cards because I think it shows that you took the time to write a thank you note. I also like emails because they're quick, and if you're going to make a quick hiring decision, you get it right away. So I will tell you, both options are very valuable for your application process. The thank you letter actually provides you with a great opportunity to follow up on the interview, because a lot of times in an interview, I get nervous, and I'm sure everybody else does too. And you forget to tell them something super important that you wanted to tell them. And then you walk out of that interview room and you say, oh my gosh, I wish I would have told them about this experience because it's so related to that question that they asked, and it would have been a better example than the one that I gave, right? How many people have done that? I have. So it's a really great way to first show the appreciation for the employer's interest in you. So first you're going to thank them for their time. You're going to reiterate your interest in the position and in the organization. And when you're doing that, make sure to explain why you're interested. Not just that you are, but maybe bring in at least one point that was talked about during the interview so that they knew that you were listening and you were engaged in the interview process. Review or remind the employer about the qualifications that you have for the position. So make sure just to reiterate those things that they are looking for and the things that you have to offer. And then again, follow up on something that you forgot to mention in the interview. If you said, you asked me about my experience handling cash, and I totally forgot, and I failed to tell you about an experience that I had, I want to tell you a little bit more about that, and then write a quick paragraph about that experience that you had as, handling cash at some sort of retailer, for example, or whatever the example may be. And then those are all the components that you have to add, but this just demonstrates that you have good manners and you know how to write a thank you letter. And it's, again, following up with your type of writing skills, so make sure that, again, it's grammatically correct and there are no spelling errors and it's legible. So I have gotten handwritten notes, which I think are very nice, but I couldn't read them very well. So make sure that you can definitely read what you had written. So. And I'm running ahead because I think I'm talking really fast because there's so many of you. Are there any questions that I can answer? Out of all of these people in this room, I'm sure that you have a resume or a cover letter or some type of question, so. Yeah?
Is it better to attach a separate sheet for your reference page, like if there's not room on the bottom of your resume, or is it better to put the line saying?
Yeah. That's a really good point. I think I'm going to stand here. It's really kind of got a nice breeze. We often hear you should have a one-page resume, and I don't think that that's true anymore, only because most resumes that you're submitting, or cover letters and resume combinations you're submitting, they're online now. So I think that erring on the side of a larger, longer resume, so maybe a 2-page resume instead of a 1-page, and including all of the information that's relevant to the position, is better than trying to pare it back to a 1-page resume and eliminating some of those really important things. So yes, if you have a 1-page resume and you can't fit those references, do a separate references page. If you have a 2-page resume or you have a 1.5 pages, add those references to fill that bottom part of the page. That's a good question. Any other questions? Megan?
About how long do you spend looking at a cover letter, and if it's full of errors, how much time on that one?
I would say that an applicant gets between 2 and 3 minutes. They don't get very much time. So typically what we would do is we would skim through the resume the first time to see if you meet those basic qualifications. So if we can't find whether or not you meet those basic qualifications on the first skim of the resume, typically you're put in that pile where you're not going to get an interview. So it's really important to put all of those really critical things either in your cover letter or very easily accessible in your resume. Grammar and spelling errors are the first things that people on my committees notice. They will say, this person had so many spelling errors and so many grammatical errors, like I don't think they could do this job because it's going to require communications outside of the department, and that's just, it's an essential skill that we need here. So I would say that that does eliminate you from a pool more quickly than other errors. So, good. Good question. Resume and cover letter writing is it's a technical writing skill. So you need to make sure that all of the errors are taken care of before you submit it to someone. I've also had resumes and cover letters submitted to the wrong organization. I've worked here for 9 years, and I would say that I have seen many, many cover letters and resumes addressed to Grand Valley State University. Tons of them. Little do they know they cannot get a job at GRCC or at Grand Valley State University by sending it to GRCC's Human Resources Department. We all know that they actually were trying to apply for a job at GRCC, but they didn't take the time to edit their cover letter and resume to put the right employer, and that will count you out of a job pretty quickly too. That attention to detail really does matter. I've got a question here, and then I'll go to the back.
How important is putting an objective on the resume?
That's a really good question, and I always laugh with objectives because a lot of people still use them, and I honestly don't think that they're necessary because they know that you want that job, and that cover letter is telling them what your objective is, right, to get that job. I think that an objective can actually hurt you more than it can help you, because if your objective doesn't align with the company, then they're going to toss you out right there. Yep. And then there was a question in the back.
Do you or do you know of anybody who follows the application process by uploading social media?
GRCC does not use social media, but I can tell you that a lot of companies do use social media. There's not currently any legislation that tells you that we cannot do that at this point, but I'm sure that there will be at some point some sort of legislation because it definitely crosses that line into personal and professional. I've heard of employers requiring people to log into their Facebook and having to like do a search in their Facebook account. So I would clean up your Facebook. I mean, honestly, not that you shouldn't have your own personal life, but if you're looking for a job, make sure that that Facebook doesn't have inappropriate things on it. Pictures, drinking, a lot of swear words, a lot of crazy things that you've got going on Facebook. So I know it sounds fun and that's how you communicate with your friends, but it's so public. Either that or just lock it down. I know a lot of people that have searched for jobs and just got rid of their Facebook account altogether because it's just not worth the risk. So, and you could put together like a LinkedIn profile. A lot of people are doing that as a professional social media type of profile, I guess. And we don't look at that here at GRCC unless the candidate points us to it. So if they say, please check out my LinkedIn profile, I've got several projects that I'd like you to review on there. So at that point we would look at that, but that's the only time we do that. Good question. Yeah?
Okay, I'm like really old school, so.
That's all right.
Back in the day, when you put your resume out and it was a great job, but everybody in the state of Michigan went for that job.
They all applied, yeah.
When we used to show that our interest in the job by calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
So
the person that called and bugged the most got the job.
Yeah.
They showed the most interest.
The most interest. So the question is, if you know that a lot of people are going to apply for a job, should you call frequently to let them know that you're interested in the job? That's really funny because my mom is still of that same mindset, and my dad had applied to a job a long, long time ago, and that's how he ended up getting it. Is he was the most persistent, and he's still there. But when we apply for jobs, my mom still says the same thing. She's like, well, you should call or stop in there every day and let them know that you want that job. And not anymore. I wouldn't say that that's probably the best case. A lot of people will call me for updates on the jobs, and because here at GRCC we use a committee interview, I'm not the person that's making that final decision. So you're just reiterating to the wrong person over and over again that you really are interested in the job. I think that it's okay to call once or twice to figure out what the status is if it's taking a particularly long time. So our response to any applicant, you get an automatic email saying it's going to take us 2 to 3 weeks to review your resume. If it's been 3 or 4 weeks, you could call and say, I was just wondering on the status of this position. Are you still searching for someone, or has it been filled? And then at that point, then you can say, well, I'm glad that it's still available. I'm very interested in the position, and these are the qualifications I have. I'd really be interested in talking to you about it. And at that point, it's a good conversation, and it shows that you're definitely interested in the one at GRCC in that particular position, and you're not just calling every day just to call. Good question. Yeah?
If you're about to graduate and then you're applying for a job, is it best to do it 2 to 3 weeks in advance, or would it be best to do it 6 months in advance?
It depends on the job, actually. I would say here we have had people apply for jobs if they're like a semester out. Mm-hmm. So say we're requiring a bachelor's degree and it's an IT position, for example, and they're going to complete the degree in April and they're applying in January. A lot of times we will still consider that applicant if they have good experience and the qualifications. So I would say start applying earlier, just so that you're kind of getting your hat in the ring for as many positions as possible, especially if you're interested in it. And I would put that right in your cover letter. I have not yet completed my degree. My anticipated graduation date is April of 2016, and just kind of go from there. So, but as long as you're upfront about when you're going to get that degree, I would definitely start throwing your name in. Yeah, and we have done that. We have hired people that do not have their degree, and then it's in their offer letters, contingent that they finish their degree.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? I know we got a couple more minutes, so a couple more questions. All right, well, if I don't have any questions, I really appreciate you allowing me to speak with you today and give some information to you. You're welcome to keep those resumes that I have. Again, Rachel's up here signing any sort of releases for your professors, and thanks for letting me huff and puff through this.